We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara Mesechet Shekalim. This is Shekalim Daf 11a. The Gemara in the previous Amud had quoted the opinion of the Chachamim that if the Beis HaMikdash is missing the key or the basin or its stand, so then those are ma'akev and you cannot bring karbonos, but other items are not going to be a problem. And the Gemara now is in the middle of asking on various Amoraim who seem to disagree with this. For example, the Gemara quoted Rebbe Lazar and Rebbe Yossi ben Chanina. They said any item about which it says the word nochach, that's ma'akev. For example, an example of that would be the menorah. There was also the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman in the name of Rabbi Yonasan. Any item about which it says the word tzela, an example of that would be the shulchan. That is ma'akev. And now the Gemara is in the middle of quoting the opinion of Rabbi Eila in the name b'shem Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, in the name of Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, va'afilu sima ma'akev. Even items about which it says the word sima, vayosem, for example, the aron, the paroches, those are going to be ma'akev. So in any case, that's the question over here. How are these Amoraim contradicting the Chachamim, the Tanoim, who are the Chachamim? So the Gemara answers, Amar Reb Chanina. Reb Chanina says it's not a question. Kan ba'avodo shebifnim. The situations all the Amoraim are talking about when you're doing some kind of avoda bifnim, meaning inside the heichel. Kan ba'avodo shebachutz. But in the situation of the Chachamim, where they said only the kior and its stand are going to be ma'akev, that's talking about avodas that are done on the mizbeach hachitzon, on the mizbeach outside the heichel. So that's when only the kior and its stand are going to be ma'akev. And the Gemara continues. Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina says, "Shachtzis gedol lahaisu b'vnei kohanim gedolim." There was a great arrogance among the children of the kohanim gedolim. Sheyoser mishishim kikarei zav hayomotziin ba. Because they spent more than 60 kikarei zav in terms of building the kevesh, this bridge or this ramp that was used to bring the para aduma. Shahaya kivsha shel para omed. Not only that, there already was a ramp that was built for this para aduma. Nobody would use the ramp, the bridge that his friend made. Everybody would destroy it and they would build a new one. The idea is they wanted to show off their wealth, what kind of nice kevesh they'd be able to build. And so the Gemara asks, is it really because of gaiva? Is it really because of arrogance that they did this, that they built these independent bridges? Heisiv Rabbi Ula Kume Rabbi Mona. Rabbi Ula asks in front of Rabbi Mona of Hatani, but it was taught, Shimon HaTzadik Shtei Paros Asa, that Shimon HaTzadik himself, he brought two paradumas, Lo Bekevesh Shehotzi Azu, and he didn't use the same kevesh for this para that he used for the other para. So Islach L'meimar Shimon HaTzadik Shachatz Hayed, do you really think that Shimon HaTzadik was arrogant? Is that the reason why he was doing that? So the Gemara says, Mai Kedon, so what really is the reason? Al Shem Maila Hi B'Para, Silsel Hi B'Para. The reason is they do extra chumras of the importance and the kavod of the para aduma, and that's why they would make an independent para, an independent kevesh for each para aduma. And the Gemara continues, Tani, it was taught, Zizin Uksalim, you had stones that were jutting out in walls, Hayuyotzin Mikanu Mikan. They were built along the sides of the bridge. Kidei Shelo Yatzitzu HaKohanim V'yitmu. The reason why they were there was so the Kohanim shouldn't look off and stick their head out from over the bridge and accidentally put themselves over some tumah and become tameh. So they wanted to block off the sides so that there would be no way that the Kohanim who were leading the paraduma would become tameh. And the Gemara continues, quoting the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva, Omer ein mistachrin v'chulu. Rabbi Akiva says you can't use the money of hektish to try to make a profit, even if that profit is meant to go to hektish. And the Gemara here explains, there is a scenario, even Rabbi Akiva would agree, you're allowed to try to do that, to try to allow hektish to profit, and that's if you agree that if there's a loss of money involved in the business dealings, you'll take it yourself, you'll accept the loss yourself, and if there is any profit, the profit will go to hektish. Then that's fine, because then there's a guarantee that hektish won't lose out from this business transaction. Kehada Bar Zamina, it was like the story of Bar Zamina. Ispakid Gabe Midaldi Yasomim. He had some money that was deposited that he was protecting on behalf of the Yasomim, on behalf of some orphans. Asa Vishal Rabbi Mona. So he went and he asked Rabbi Mona, can I do business with this? And then I'll give them the profit. Amar Lei, so he said to him, in boys diav Seda Didach, if you're willing to take the loss for yourself in case there's a loss of money, Viagra de Tarvechon, and if there's a profit, then you'll split it, you'll take some of the profit, and you'll give some of the profit to them, Shari, then it's going to be permitted. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yechia Barada had exactly this case. Ispakit gabe midal di yisomin. He had from orphans some money. V'yavid chen, he did exactly this. He accepted the loss upon himself in case there'd be a potential loss, and then if there would be profit, he would take the profit and split it together with the yisomim. And the Gemara continues quoting the Mishnah, Moser Peiros v'chulu. It said if you have Moser Peiros, that extra amount of money that Hektish gets, that's used for Ketzah Mizbeach, it's used for summertime karbonos. And as we said when we did the Mishnah, the Gemara is going to explain what does Moser Peiros mean, what does Moser Nesachim mean, what are these kinds of profit that the Beis HaMikdash is making. So the Gemara says, Masnisin de Rabbi Yishmael. First of all, our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael holds we're allowed to take the resources of Hektish and do business with them and give the profit to Hektish, and that's exactly what's happening over here. To Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef, because Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef, Passer Masnisa, he explains our Mishnah as follows, Moser Peiros Schar LeHektish, that when you have Moser Peiros and you make profit, that profit goes to Hektish. And what we mean to say over here is that what Hektish used to do is they would sell oils and they would sell flour to people who needed to bring karbanos, and they would profit off those sales, and that profit would go to Hektish. That's what we mean by Moser Peiros is used for Ketzah Mizbeach. And he goes further. Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef says, Moser Nesachim, what does the term in the Mishnah mean when it says Moser Nesachim? Zu Sa Revius. This refers to Sa Revius. What this means is that the Gizbar used to buy, they used to purchase wine and oil and flour, and they used to set the price early on at the beginning of the year. For example, they would set the price, let's say, they would say we're going to buy 3 sa'ah for a selah. Now, if the price would then change, and now the price is now you get 4 sa'ah for a selah, that profit goes to Hektish. The people selling would have to provide the extra sa'ah, the sa'ah revius, for the exact same price, and that profit that goes to Hektish, again, that's referred to as Moser Nesachim. Rabbi Yochanan Passer Masnisa, Rabbi Yochanan explained the Mishnah slightly differently. He said Moser Peiros is Sa'ah Revius. When it says the term Moser Peiros in the Mishnah, that actually refers to Sa'ah Revius that we just explained before. And Moser Nesachim, and what does Moser Nesachim mean according to Rabbi Yochanan? Leveirutzin. What that means is Beirutzin. Beirutzin means again that when Hektish would purchase things, the measurement wouldn't be exact. It would actually be in favor of Hektish. You would give an extra heap. You would give a larger amount to Hektish. That was the profit called Moser Nesachim. So the Gemara now says, V'les leiler Rav Chia Bar Yosef Leveirutzin. But 1 second, Rav Chia Bar Yosef doesn't hold of this concept of Beirutzin. It sounds like only Rabbi Yochanan has that. So the Gemara explains as follows. Amar Rabbi Chizkiya says, Ma dinafal l'sa'ah revius. Whatever extra profit they got with that 4th sa'ah, nafal l'beirutzin. The same exact thing would happen to the beirutzin. In other words, that's all considered one halacha, one din. It's all called Moser Nesachim, according to Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. And so the Gemara now says, Al daite de Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef nicha. According to Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef, and again, Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef explains that Moser Peiros refers to actual profit through business dealings. That all makes sense. Ein mistakrin b'shel hektish, af lo b'shel aniyim. The halacha, according to some Tanoim, is you're not allowed to make a profit through hektish or through the property of aniyim. Lefikach, and therefore, zev v'zeh lo hayu modin b'peiros. That's why we had Tanoim in the Mishnah, specifically Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Chanina Skan HaKohanim, who did not agree with the concept of Moser Peiros, because they said you're not allowed to profit off the resources of the Beis HaMikdash, even if the profit goes to Hektish. However, al daite de Rabbi Yochanan kasha, but according to Rabbi Yochanan's explanation of what Moser Peiros is, which it simply is the price changes, and now the halacha is it has to be sold at the better price to Hektish, so kasha, that's actually difficult. Do you mean to say that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Chanina Skana Kavanam don't agree with the concept of Sa'ah Revius? V'ataninon, but we learned in a Mishnah, Amdu migimel, if the original price again is 3 sa'ah, yisapek midalid. If the price changes and you can get more, now you have to get 4 sa'ah. So that's a beferish Mishnah. Everybody seems to agree that that kind of profit belongs to Hektish. V'taninon, and yet we're learning in our Mishnah, zev v'zeh lo yumodim b'peiros. Both these Tanoim, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim, do not admit by peiros. So what's going on? Why don't they admit it? It seems to be a beferish Mishnah that Sa'ah Revius is a concept that exists when it comes to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara explains, Lo hayumodim b'peiros b'ketzah mizbeach. According to Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim don't admit that Moser Peiros is used for ketzah mizbeach. They say it's not used for karbonos in the summer. Avol mod and hayu b'klisharis, but they do admit there's such a thing as moser peiros, and they say that that extra money is used for the purchase of klisharis. So meaning, again, according to Rabbi Yochanan, everybody admits that there's a concept of moser peiros. The question just is, what is that money used for? And the Gemara now continues, ad kidon beirutze tzibur. I understand, let's say you had an extra heap when it came to beirutze tzibur, meaning you had nesachim of karbonos tzibur. So then if you have a little bit extra, let's say you can use that to buy a klisharis. Va'afilu beirutze yachid, but is this true even if you have nesachim of a carbon yachid, you have a little extra, you can use that? V'lo nimsu klisharis boin mishal yachid. Doesn't it then come out that klisharis are coming from a carbon yachid or from an individual donation? In other words, if carbon yachid, a guy brought, an individual person brought some nesachim, and there was beirutzim, there was a little extra amount, they're allowed to use that profit to buy klisharis. Isn't that a problem that klisharis are not coming from public funds? The Gemara answers, no, it's not a problem. And it's like that which we learned in the Mishnah. Isha sha'asta ksones livna. Let's say a woman, the mother of the Kohen Gadol, she makes a ksones for her son. So kshera, it's perfectly good. It could be used by the Kohen Gadol. As long as she gives it, she donates it to the public. And the same thing is true over here. If this yachid brings a little extra, he donates it to the tzibur. It's not a problem to use it for klisharis. And the Gemara then continues, Ad kidon beirutze lach va'afilu beirutze yavish. You should know when you have this extra, it is true whether it's extra lach, in other words, whether it has to do with something that's wine or oil, or even if it has to do something like a person donated or a person brought as a carbon mincha, a person brought flour. So in that case as well, if he brought a little extra, that also can be used. In this case, the Gemara is talking specifically about Ketzah Mizbeach. It doesn't matter if it's lach, it doesn't matter if it's yavesh, the extra amount that's given can be used for the summertime karbonos. And how do we know that this applies both, again, to beirutze lach and beirutze yavesh? It's like we learned in the Mishnah over there. This is a Mishnah in Menachos, and now we're going to go here with the Girsa of the Gra. The Taninon Taman, again, we learned over there in the Mishnah, beirutze lach kodesh. So first of all, again, somebody's bringing a carbon, and he's bringing extra wine, extra oil, something that's lach, something that's liquid. So then that's going to be kodesh. Beirutze yavesh chulin. Again, if the person brings, let's say, extra flour, something that's dry, that extra amount is not sanctified. The lama beirutze lach kodesh. Now, why is it that beirutze lach are sanctified? Mipnei shemidas halach. It's because the kalim which you hold the liquids in, nimshach mi befnim. Those are anointed with the shemen hamishcha on the inside. They have kedusha. Everything there is going to be kodesh. And lama beirutze yavesh chol. Why is it that the extra amount of yavesh is chol is not kodesh? Mipnei shemidas hayavesh lo nimshach. Because the midas hayavesh, the kalim that are holding the yavesh, have not been anointed with the shemen hamishcha. Bein mi befnim, bein mi bachutz, not on the inside, not on the outside. And then it continues, kol beirutze midas halalu. All the beirutzim of these things, whether they're lach, whether they're yavesh, im yesh zerach acher yakriv wimo. First of all, if there's another carbon to bring them together with, you bring the other carbon together with this stuff. V'im lanu nifsalu belina. And if they stay overnight past their proper time, they're pasul belina. The simple pshat is that's referring to the beirutze lach, which have kedusha. V'im lav, and here's the point, if there is no other carbon to bring it along with, yimachru l'ketzah mizbeach. This extra amount can be sold and used for ketzah mizbeach. Again, it can be used for the summertime karbonos, and therefore you see, whether it's beirutze lach, whether it's beirutze yavish, it can be used for the ketzah mizbeach. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, and we'll just have a brief introduction before we read the Mishnah. The Mishnah here is talking about the ketores. And the way the ketores worked was they would make the ketores one time a year, enough to last the entire year, and they'd even make a little bit extra. They used to make 368 moneh. So even if you had a leap year, which was 365 days, that would be 1 moneh per day. The ketores each day was 1 moneh. And then you used a little bit more for the avod on Yom Kippur. And then you'd always have some left over. In a regular year, which was only 354 days, you would certainly have a lot of extra ketores. So the question was, what did they do with the extra ketores? How did they redeem it and use its value? So the Mishnah says, Mosra ketores maha yuosin bo. What did they do with the Mosra ketores? Now there could have been a simple solution. They could have just sold the Mosra ketores on the market, get some money, and use the money for whatever need they wanted to do. But they didn't want to do that because they didn't think it was the proper tznius. They didn't think it was appropriate to deal with the ketores in such a business-like manner and sell it on the market. So instead, the Mishnah says, Mafrishin mimena schar ha'umnin. They would separate the ketores and designate it, so to speak, as a payment for the umnin. Umechalin osa al mos ha'umnin. They would be mechalit on the money of the umnin. They would give it to the craftsmen for their wages. And then in the end, they would actually pay the craftsman from the Truma Chadasha, meaning from the Machatzis HaShekel. Now, this will be explained a little more in the Gemara exactly how the process worked. But the point is as follows. The point is they would take this ketores and they would designate it as money or as value for money, which was going to pay the umnim who worked in the Beis HaMikdash. These umnim either worked to build the actual Beis HaMikdash or they worked in order to create the ketores, whatever exactly they did. But basically you would take the extra ketores and somehow you would take the kedusha from the ketores and it would get to these machatzis HaShekel, and the machatzis HaShekel would then be used by hektish to pay the umnim. The Mishnah just concludes, V'imba chodesh bizmano. Now what about, let's say, the month of Adar? So the month of Adar could sometimes be a regular month, or sometimes it could be a leap month. Now, that would make a big difference, because what do you do with the ketores on the 30th day of Adar? Is that part of Adar, or is it not a leap month and it's Nisan, it's already the next year? So the Mishnah says, V'imba chodesh bizmano. If it's a regular normal year and the 30th day of Adar is actually the first day of Nisan, it's a new year, so lochin osam truma chadasha, they would purchase the ketores using the truma chadasha, using the new shekels from the new year, because it's already the new year. But if not, let's say it was a leap month, so now it's really the 30th day of Adar, it's still the previous year, then you would use the old trumas halishka in order to purchase, again, the ketores for that particular day. So the Gemara now asks, V'lo nimtza hektish mischalal ala hektish. Isn't it coming out over here that you're taking the ketores, which is hektish, and you're being mischalalit, you're taking its kedusha and putting it onto machatzis HaShekel to pay the workers. So you're taking the kedusha from the ketores and putting it on the machatzis HaShekel, but that's also already kodesh. So how are you being mechal? How are you getting rid of the kedusha from the ketores onto something which is already hektish? You can't be mischal hektish on hektish. So the Gemara explains as follows. Ketzad Erosa, what would he do? He would do as follows. Amar Rabbi Shimon bar Bisna, Rabbi Shimon bar Bisna said, maybe Mos, he would bring money, and he would be mechal it on the binyan itself, and we'll continue with this discussion and explain the process in the next video on Daf Yomi Gemara Amud Beis.